You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs on News Radio WBRN.
Off the left side to the end zone. Touchdown Bulldogs.
If I'm even having like a bad day on the course or something, I just look down at it and just feel like thankful that I'm able to be out there.
Making sure that we're like where our feet are and we're not thinking about outside distractions.
Welcome in, everybody, to another great edition of Behind the Bulldogs, our summer season recap series. Brandon Worth, Tatum Outlaw joining you here. We are short-handed this week. It's very sad. Brody is gone, but we are still... The show must go on. We must keep going. We're talking women's basketball today, and we have a lot to recap because this was a team, especially storybook year, certainly was on the table at the start of the season. And you want to talk about one of the most resilient teams, arguably, of all the Ferris State teams we will cover this summer. This one certainly is near the top of the list on how they played this year.
No, I definitely agree. I think this team in this last season, they need a reality show. I mean, there was so much going on. It was so up and down, but the girls did the best that they could, and they were so resilient, like you said, and it was just really fun to keep up with them. So I'm excited to recap this season.
Absolutely. We'll get into the schedule of results, their tournament finishes, some accolade-winning players, as well as we'll get into our breakout players that we expect to be good for expectation-wise next year. And there's a lot to pick from for this team. It's a good problem to have with all of our programs. You've obviously broke down softball, tennis, golf, and track so far. If you've missed those episodes, find us on Spotify, Behind the Bulldogs, as well as Apple Podcasts. You can also follow WBRN.com and YouTube on Big Rapids Daily News to find the episodes, but you can catch up with those. We've talked about it a little bit, and there's obviously always been a lot of people to pick from, and that's a good problem to have across the board with any sport.
For sure. We were just talking about, before this episode started, who we were thinking about picking, and we were like, oh, this person could do it, and then this person can do it, and this person. So we're still unsure, but I guess just stay tuned to see who we pick.
Stay tuned towards the later part of the episode. If you skip forward, shame on you. Stay with us the whole episode. Don't skip forward. The time codes may be there, but just forget those are there. Anyway, let's get into the recap of the season. This team, from what they had experienced 2 years ago, a lot of expectations, right? Yes, lost some pivotal pieces. We touched on that in the summer last year. A lot of room for growth for this team, a lot of new names in the starting five. But, it was a lot of experience still brought back, just elevated roles all across the board for a lot of these players. Reaching the Final Four, right, is a massive accomplishment. That season will be remembered forever in Bulldog sports, especially in women's basketball program history books. But this year especially, started the season, right, that massive win against Pitt State in Kansas was absolutely massive, or Missouri, I should say. Pittsburgh State, obviously a team from Kansas, but that was a huge win, obviously playing in that invitational of a tournament. Teams knew we were going to be good. That's why they wanted us in this tournament. And then you saw some big wins, right? Playing at Drury early on in the year, getting a big victory there. Playing Ashland at home, that was a very tight game. You guys got ousted by a really good Eagles team that obviously made a good run in the tournament, top 10 nationally throughout the season. But, obviously, the injuries were a big storyline in this season.
For sure.
A lot of players putting into roles they hadn't been in before. The fact that this team made the tournament, not to, of course, dismay the public opinion, right? The vision that this team wouldn't make it there. But I think we truly underappreciate how resilient this team was to make the postseason for all what they had lost this season. We talked to Coach Westendorp earlier on this year, some of the players, the amount of adjustments they had to make in the season. Teams would dread the idea of going into a season knowing they're going to have to change so many things. But this team found a way to win games and make the tournament. Honestly, one of the most impressive seasons, we might argue, from this team this past year.
For sure. And I am a firm believer in you only go as far as your seniors take you. And most of their seniors, Kaden, she was hurt. She's coming back still, but she was an older person on the team. Most of their seniors were injured. So for them it really just shows their leadership, because a lot of their seniors were just on the bench, guiding their team to success, coaching them up. And I think it really showed. And the girls were definitely, you could tell they were fighting for something more than just winning games. They were fighting for those injured players, and every game they had to prove themselves. So it was just really cool to see them fight every single game. They started the season off very, very strong, which is what you said. And the hardest thing to come back from is success, especially from the last season they had. All the teams were coming for them, and I think they handled all of that very well. Then some injuries happened, but they handled everything they could. So
coming from the year before and seeing what they did last year, it really puts an expectation on this program that really, I think we had the idea like this is where they could be, and they showed us this is where they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most impressive thing. Like this team's made the tournament, especially, going back to the COVID year, right? The team making the tournament first time in how long after winning at Allendale, right? We were like, man, this is awesome. Tournament gets canceled, right? Kind of go into a little bit of a lull, right? Obviously, the coaching changed to Coach Westendorp, and they made this rebuild to the point where now they have that expectation every year. It's a great expectation, team that finished third overall this past year, I should say, in the regular season in conference play, but ultimately was the runner-up in that championship game after beating Northern Michigan, which was an incredible game. But I think the fact that you look at what they did this year and still made the tournament, it's an incredible thing as a fan to have an expectation, but now I think this team especially knows when they beat Northern Michigan, right, in that semifinal game, it's, obviously Grand Valley, that was a game that didn't go our way from the jump. It was a really tough fight. We still did everything we could. You could say that about the Ashland game as well, just a little bit of a slow start. That was the only difference in that game because we were right with them down the stretch from the second quarter on. I mean, it was an incredible thing to see how much this team fought. You looked at a lot of those players that made big time step ups. I mean, how about Mia Riley? She was huge scoring the basketball for this team down the stretch. I mean, you could see that consistent play. Kenzie Bowers really stepped up her game. You could see her, especially her first couple of years, playing a little bit more off the ball. This year, she had to play on the ball, and she had to be a scorer, a prominent scorer, and she filled that role as a great facilitator, right? A great leader for this team. Maya Hiram did what she is meant to do, right? Get rebounds, provide energy, make plays down low inside the paint, and she did that. And especially the guard play across the board. I mean, obviously looking at Emma, looking at Allie, looking at how Grace Lyons played this year, and all these other names that we'll mention later on in the show. I mean, everybody around did their part too, and that's what you need for this team to be able to be successful as they were. And they were successful at home too, especially in front of the home fans. 13 wins in 17 games this year. That's how you put on a show.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think that different players stepped up when they needed to. Like if someone was having an off game, there was always someone else who was able to step up. I mean, you said Mia, you said Maya.
Whichever one you go by.
Yeah, whatever. But you said those two. You said Kenzie. They all stepped up when they needed to. But it shows that shows their team chemistry because someone can't be expected to be on all the time. So the fact that they were able to step up and have each other's back, it was just really fun to watch them. And I think, I feel like they definitely dealt with a lot of adversity this season, but they deserve to make the tournament. And I'm really glad that they did. And it just showed all of their hard work, paying off.
100%. And you look at some of those big wins, right? Winning at Parkside in Kenosha, right? One of the toughest places to play that we've heard, talking to a lot of the players, right? Playing in what they call the Den, playing at Northern Michigan, right? At Marquette. Though that's a tough place to play, and that's a really good team. And we beat them the third time around. Playing at Houghton, the toughest road stretch as far as a single trip can go in the GLIAC. And obviously playing against teams that are nationally ranked like Grand Valley, playing Ashland, playing Pitt State. Those are all teams that we competed against. And I think that's a really impressive thing. We beat Pitt State, I believe, who was number one in the region at the end of the year, right? Obviously, having Caden Blanchard, right, especially helped with that. But also, you look at a lot of those players that we didn't see this year, right? A couple red shirts that are going to be very exciting. We'll see if we get some breakouts there. The biggest thing I think this team struggled with a little bit this year, they weren't the best on the road overall. It was a little bit of a test on the road. Granted, a lot of those conference games and a lot of those away games came in the later half of their schedule, right? Most of the ones early on in the year would be considered neutral, right? Those tournament games we mentioned, Pitt State, some of those early on in the year. But a lot of those games, right, with a lot of those injuries taking place, they were 7-6, I believe, on the road this year, which isn't bad. You like that number a little bit higher if you're a team that really wants to contend later into March. But I think the biggest thing, too, was you saw this team put up 118 in the game.
Right.
But you didn't see that every week. You didn't see a consistent offensive scoring. You look back at the scoring and you can see that they would be able to score, 70, 60, 80, get up to the high 80s. But defensively and offensively, the consistency on every given night was a little bit of a struggle where they could score the ball at 75, but they're giving up 85, or they would only score 65, but then, they would have a struggle, but then they would give up only 59. To be one of those type of things where it seemed like once one thing was on, one thing was off, playing to the tempo of the game more than the tempo they want to play. And the 3-point shooting could be lights out, but sometimes it was ice cold, especially in the tournament.
Right, I agree. I think pinching out a couple more wins away will definitely help this team significantly. And I think also there were a lot of the games I watched, where we got caught up is we just weren't shooting the ball enough. So I think just finding ways to shoot the ball more, finding other ways to score. And not to mention, I feel like most of their away games were in Allendale. And that gym is hard to play in. I mean, we played there multiple times throughout the season and in postseason because they hosted GLIACs. They hosted regionals, right? So yeah, I mean, a lot of those games were in Allendale. That's a hard enough gym to play in. I know personally from a volleyball standpoint, I don't love playing in that gym. Very difficult to play in it. And, you know, obviously their fans are in addition to that as well.
They don't like us. And it's hard to play against a team.
Long story short, what I'm getting at, they don't like us.
They don't like us. We've known that. We'll continue to know that till the end of time, until either one of these universities, decides to hang it up, which is not happening anytime soon. But you look at like the stat breakdowns, right? Obviously, we mentioned 17 games at home this year, 13 on the road, 3 of them, or 3 additional games being neutral games. In the 21 wins we had this year, shot 37 from 3, 23 in losses this year. Not saying that's the sole indicating factor of a lot of these losses, but that is one thing that is very common. You look at the overall efficiency, and wins, obviously positive efficiency, loss in negative efficiency, which, when you think about it in grand scheme of things, you don't really need to know the metrics. You can just tell, better efficiency in wins, less in losses. It makes perfect sense. But the defense, especially as well, 40 rebounds per game, especially quite a few of them defensively, right? Talking about 27 out of 40 compared to 34 overall rebounds per game and losses, 22 of them. So when they were getting to work defensively, and here's the one that was almost the most staggering to me, about 9.7, give or take, round up to 10 steals in losses, 14 to 15 in wins this year. 14 to 15 even. When they were getting it done defensively, that was leading to a lot of the success. So as much as we talk about shooting the basketball, that was indicative of the season, many fans will see that. But this team really did well in a lot of games defensively, where they were blocking shots, boxing out on the boards, being able to get steals and turn them into points, right? Points off of turnovers is one of the big indicators of wins at this level. But I think especially that was one of the parts where you knew that team was going to be on. As much as shooting the basketball certainly could be an indicator of that, I would argue on the contrary, maybe even a little bit more, when we saw offensive rebounds for another team, or we saw a lot of ball moving around that created open shots, we're going to be a little bit of trouble. But you have to take in mind too, with that, the way that the game goes around, you have such a smaller depth of a team, losing a lot of those players.
Right.
Defensively, you're going to get tired out a lot more when you're playing more minutes on the floor. That gives up more open shots. That gives up more offensive rebounds. That can also be related in the factor where this team could have made up more wins this year.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they played to their strengths well. There's one of their strengths being defense. I mean, I think some of their shooters were obviously ones that were injured, some of their best shooters. So they did a really good job at putting a lot of pressure on teams with their defense and, stalling them, making them work harder to make those shots. I mean, they did really, really well with that. So if we could just find more ways to score and continue with that defense for next season, I think they'll have a really, really great season.
Absolutely. And you look especially at overall statistical leaders for this team. Caden Blanchard only played 13 games. In those games, 17.5 points per game. That's what you lost part through the year. And when you talk about making up that offensive points per game, right, especially after she went down, it was, who's going to take? And I mean, Mia Riley went from a player that was, putting together some solid performances, not necessarily that were blowing the box score out of the water, but finishing almost 15 points per game this year in those games. That's incredible. Maya Hiram about 13.0 points per game. Kenzie Bowers added right around 11. Once again, as that facilitator role. She's not one that's looking almost more to score, but as she kind of developed into that role of looking to score more when she knew she had to. And I think that was a big part. And she did it especially outside of shooting as well. When you look at more of the ball control stats, all the other things, you're looking at rebounds, you're looking at assists. I mean, Kenzie 6.3 rebounds per game, I believe around 4 assists. I believe she was a leader in both of those categories. And in rebounds, that's including the bigs as well, right? Maya Hiram in that, I think around 5.2. Blanchard was about 5.8. Riley was about 5.9. You saw that especially, looking at Claire Erickson off the bench, Alyssa Worth, especially in the rebounding category. Overall steals, I believe, was also led, I should retract that statement. 2.8 for Mia, as well as 2.3 from Elle Irwin. That was a name we haven't mentioned overall. Yeah. She was you could tell she was that glue piece, right? Yeah. Does all the dirty work, scrappy defensively, really helps facilitate and shoot offensively.
Working hard behind the scenes.
Oh, yes.
But if she's not there, you're going to notice.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, especially you mentioned the experience as well. Having somebody like Deshauna Day coming off the bench or in that starting lineup, obviously she dealt with a lot of injuries down the stretch. Sure. She would have been an asset to have in the postseason.
For sure.
But I mean, especially we got more players, right, that we haven't even mentioned, right? We're looking at Mia McLaughlin. We're looking at Mara Mitchell. And Mara Mitchell might be a name that we mentioned later on in the show.
I've heard a lot of good stuff about her.
We might have to wait on that one for a couple minutes. But overall, especially some of those statistical leaders, I think one of the biggest things that this team really did well, part of the year, I think we brought this up, nationally, I believe top 10 in assist to turnover ratio as a team. Wow. They took care of the basketball. And that's what you got to do when you might not necessarily have your predominant scorers on the floor. A lot of those, aggressive players that can get you points. You have to take care of the ball. And that was a really big bright spot of this team.
Oh, for sure. They definitely did take care of the ball. And I'm really intrigued to see who, not to jump ahead, but I'm just really intrigued to see who's coming in next season. I mean, you talked about Mara, and I'm thinking okay, who else is coach bringing in this next year? I'm really excited. And I think that a lot of these girls are going to have to step up for next season, but I definitely think they can. And I think there was a lot of freshman and sophomore exposure to the court, and they had to step up in times that maybe they weren't ready or prepared to step up for. But I think it's only going to make them stronger leaders for that team next season. So I think dealing with all this adversity from this season, they're only going to be a bigger, better, and stronger team for next season.
Oh, absolutely. You have to imagine, especially with all these players coming back. We mentioned Caden Blanchard's going to run it back this year, and more names are being talked about. Of course, life is going to go on no matter what, and we wish them the best, either if they're back in a uniform or if they're off into the waves of life. But it's going to be very fun indeed to see where this team is. We'll get into our breakouts here in just a moment. I do want to highlight, of course, our all GLIAC team this year. And there's a lot of players that especially, you look at the season, we saw a couple weeks this year. Obviously, Mia Riley, I believe week 15, offensive player of the week, as well as week 10. Kenzie was in there week 9 as an offensive player. But not only that, but we saw defensive players of the week as well. Mia was in week 1 in that first opening regular season week, was nominated as defensive player of the week. Caden Blanchard was also in there in week 8. And so it's almost as impressive to see not only the offensive portion that, of course, Bulldog fans are accustomed to seeing, long 3-point shots, a lot of points. We watch a fun brand of basketball. You can't stress that enough. But getting it done on the defensive side, too, is extremely important.
I agree. And I think the season looked rocky at times when it really wasn't as bad as what it looked like. And I think, we were at every single game. But when you look at these accolades that some of these players are getting, you're like, okay, we're actually doing so well, regardless of what it may or may not look like. And these girls are working really hard, and accolades obviously aren't everything, but it feels nice to know that you're seen for your hard work. You're getting appreciated. You're getting these accolades. So proud of these girls, so deserving of it.
Absolutely. Looking at some of those first team and second teamers, Kenzie Bowers was a first teamer this past year, as well as Mia Riley. Both of them tabbed as first team all GLIAC. Second team to Maya Hiram, another great season from her, continuing her consistency. Elle Irwin, all GLIAC defensive team, and rightfully so for how well she played on that side of the floor. And I think that's super impressive. And we could make arguments, for some of these other players getting into that first, second team or honorable mention. It was just a lot of the times we saw, and this is one thing you have, as kind of a negative in as far as awards are concerned, when you have such a deep team. We talk especially about looking at a lot of those players that stepped into those roles, especially, a lot of those guards, that were interchangeable. And it's a great thing to have that as a coach. But, when it goes to award picking, you're like, well, all 3 of these players played really well to the same level, and you don't want to highlight one without the other 3. But those were definitely standouts this year from those 4 individuals, I should say, recounting in my head. And I think that they were well deserved. And I think this is going to be a fun conversation next year as we reminisce on what the next season holds and see how much improvement this team is, and see if there's more honorees for next year, just based on the fact that it's a good problem when you got almost everybody coming back.
Oh, for sure. And I think there's other players who did very, very well this season that didn't get recognized for their play. I mean, I loved watching Emma. I think when she was on fire, she was on fire. Loved watching her. Same thing with Allie. Loved watching her too. I think those are people that could step into that position next year.
Absolutely. I think we wanted to try to get both Ethan Erickson, who we'll mention on the men's basketball episode coming up, I believe, next week. So stay tuned for that. Him and Emma need to actually have like shirts made with the E's changed to threes, because
For real.
They both can just fill it and they let it fly.
They make
a lot.
it just look so effortless.
It takes effort to say effortless.
It really does.
Which is weird. It shouldn't be that way. But anyway, let's get to the fun part. Everybody's waiting our picks, of course, because we're the experts. Maybe. I don't know.
You can go first.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Brody will have an honorary second selection when he returns next week as scheduled. Yeah. So we'll have 4 picks next week on men's basketball, but there will be one of each from Brody's side. So we'll get you our 2 picks here. I'm torn. I think there's a lot. I believe last year, I was in the realm of picking. I think I actually made it like a 3-sided pick, and it was Allie, Mia, as well as Emma, because all 3 of them had played in an interchangeable extra guard role.
Right.
And so obviously I'm not going to go there because, of course, all 3 of them.
Naming the whole team.
Yeah, we're going to name the whole team. Honestly, I don't want to do it. You probably know who I'm going to pick here. I think we have to watch out to see what Mara Mitchell does next year. It's tough to be able to say, I want somebody else to pick, but I really think she's going to be a great player this year. I believe she played in 3 games this year, kind of in minimal minutes. But I think especially when you look at what Mara can bring to the table, a lot of athleticism, a lot of good offensive, defensive play from that guard spot. And I think that gives the depth overall in scoring, and as well defensively. That's going to not only help herself and the team, but I think that helps some of the other players defensively get that assignment moved over, taking more advantages. And although we haven't really seen Mara play, I mean, we've heard through the rumor vine and practice talking to some of the players, and they are more almost advocates of her than we probably were earlier on this year as a true freshman. But it sounds like she'll be one to watch this year. I'm going to take the player's word for it, and I'm going to pick her here. Yeah,
I wanted to pick her, but I've gone first every other time, so I didn't want to hog it today. But
I appreciate
so
you.
I'll let you have it for now.
Now? What? Okay, all right. I'm getting my picks
I'm taking the credit for it, though, if you're right on this. But let's not overlook Grace Lyons. I think she is a good candidate for this because she played in couple minutes here and there at the start of their season, threw her in. And then I think when we really needed people to actually be healthy and play, her minutes increased. And I think when she was in, she really took care of the ball. And then she even had some games where, she was sinking those threes back to back to back. And I think when she's hot, she's hot. So I think she just needed that confidence, that exposure, and just feeling college ball for a minute. So I think now that she's had that experience, she really can be a leader for this next season.
I love it indeed. And when do you talk normally about a team that has a freshman playing 26 games in their very first season?
Oh, for sure.
Not too many. And that goes to show Coach Westendorp. And obviously he's done a great job in what he sees out of Grace Lyons and all these players. It's so hard with this team in particular because they play so many players. There's so many names we could throw out, and obviously we mentioned at the beginning of the show. But those are our picks. Don't bet on them unless you do. You're welcome if you win something. If you don't, sorry, you shouldn't have trusted us. So it's a win-win for us, and that's at the end of the day what matters
what do we
most.
Know?
Oh, we know some things, not all. Not all, indeed.
Actually, we know quite a lot. We were at all of the games, so.
We were at every single home game for sure. Select away games, obviously, that we were able to make the travels for with all of our other endeavors. But it's going to be a fun season. I can't wait for hoops to start, and I know it's going to be a long time until we get there, but we're going to make it there eventually. We're going to be seeing women's. We're going to be seeing men's basketball as well, which we'll cover next week on the show.
A lot to talk about there.
A lot to talk about there, indeed. Yep. So we'll talk about that next week. I'm pretty sure Brody's going to be back with us. Pretty sure.
Let's hope. He ditched us. He ditched us today.
Oh, no. He's got his endeavors, of course, and we'll have him back on next week. Otherwise, he's got a lot of breakout picks to when he joins us again. Maybe 7. I'm hope it's not 7.
To see what he's thinking. So
yeah, I'm sure he's got to up his sleeve, his trick on who he wants to pick. Or maybe we just stole both of his picks, and then he's going to have a week to decide the next one.
Yeah, we should just not tell him who we picked and tell him not to listen to the episode and just see who he's going to pick anyway.
He probably has listened to the episode and now just heard us saying all of this stuff. And he's like, oh, I'm not supposed to listen to the episode. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to Brody. Shout out to you guys for tuning in. Be sure to follow Instagram as well as X so you don't miss out on when these episodes drop. You can follow us at _Bulldogs. And be sure to subscribe wherever you are tuning in. Big thanks to Bezos Digital, one of our sponsors on WBRN. You can listen to the show live, folks, 96.5, or excuse me, I should say 96.5, but primarily 107.7 FM every Saturday at 3 o'clock to get you ready for the weekend on the local sports hour. So until next time, we'll see you then.
Yep, see ya.